Let's talk about PlayStation
and Xbox.
So we're going to talk, we might bring those back up. We're going to talk about PlayStation and Xbox today on Let's Talk About. This is, you're on Outer Space TV. Whatever, our names will be at the bottom, so whatever. So this past year, 2013, last year was 2013,
yes.
Right? Yes. Both Sony and Microsoft released Xbox, they released PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Respectively, a week apart. I was there.
Depending on the country.
In the U.S.
In the U.S.
Well, PlayStation was worldwide on... when the PlayStation was launched here, it was worldwide in most territories. Except for Japan, they got it later for some reason.
And then Xbox was like a month by month.
Yeah, Xbox sort of was a strategic rollout.
They couldn't support all the countries at once because of the way they required servers to be monitoring all of them.
There's also the problem with, they just this month, they Microsoft launched Xbox One in Japan. In Sony's backyard. And
Xbox never had that big of a presence in Japan to begin with.
But let me I wish I had the pictures ready for you, but they were posting pictures. They had a live stream event for the midnight release. They had midnight releases for this thing.
Yeah.
I saw the pictures of the lines for the midnight release. There were no lines.
Non-existent.
They had cones set up and everything outside of all these stores.
No one was there.
The stores had lines. The only picture they have, at least that the Microsoft showed that I found, was of someone buying an Xbox One, and the guy who was holding the Xbox One was the guy who was hosting the live stream countdown event for the Xbox One midnight launch. So he worked in some small way for Microsoft, yes. And there was one other person there who was hiding their face with the Xbox One. I don't know.
Have you heard the numbers of how many they sold?
It was like 200,000 or something. It's not a lot.
Like 26,000.
Oh, it was less than that?
It's less than that.
I added a zero. That's,
The 360, though, when they tried launching in Japan then, they got up to like 60,000 on their first day. Which, they're still paltry numbers compared to what you expect in the US for these consoles.
Yes.
But there's a very clear decline from 360 to One.
Well, so the thing is, Xbox 360 back in the day, it has a very strong catalog, but the key was that they were making games that were targeted for Japanese audiences. So they made some RPGs. Eternal Sonata was one.
Tales of Vesperia
and Blue Dragon. These were made by Japanese companies, so they were targeted for Japanese gamers, and those did well, but not well enough to keep the 360 afloat in Japan. They stopped selling them like years ago, or a couple of years ago. Yeah, they can't even find them in the country because they just stopped selling them. Competition is a good thing.
Yes.
That's what we were talking
about.
Capitalism. It's really hard to say that it's not a good thing for America, for other countries as well. But so because Microsoft and Sony are competing with each other, we're getting more consoles. We're getting better consoles. We're getting better technology, and at the same time, if you look at between the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, they're really close in power and processing and everything. They're essentially the same console at the very core.
Although the hardware for the Xbox One did get a touch-up before the final release.
Yes.
Because there was a larger gap in between the two.
Yes.
And that's actually kind of a dangerous thing for console makers to do. Because whenever we look at games at the beginning and end of a console's life cycle, you see this huge change in power and graphics. And the reason is not because the console itself is getting better. It's been the same console the entire time.
Right, yeah.
But the programmers have been able to find out exploits, how to more efficiently work, each of the processors and all that, and write it much more efficiently, so you can stuff more stuff in there. Now, as soon as you change any of the hardware in a console, those exploits, basically the things that they have been purposely breaking to get greater performance, break. And games can actually become unplayable without a patch to correct the programming.
Well, and so yes, we're kind of in a space now where patches are common. Day one patches happen almost for every major release these days. The game goes gold, they ship it to wherever to make the physical discs, and then in the meantime they're like, oh wait, we should probably change this because this actually is kind of maybe a game-breaking bug, or maybe this would be better if we reallocate the memory to do this instead. So day one patches are pretty common, which, yeah, sure, it's kind of annoying to get something right out of the box and you have to sit around and wait for it to update. But, I mean, that's kind of the digital age that we're in, where at least it allows people more time to fix these things before we actually get it in our hands. Whereas if you got, like, I don't think it happened in the old days when you had a cartridge and you put the cartridge in. If it was broken, it was broken. Like there's no patch for that except buying a new cartridge.
But they were also much smaller games that they could bug test much faster.
Exactly. I mean, Nintendo doesn't really have this problem. I mean, all the games that I've ever bought from Nintendo, there's never been a patch that needs to be done because they never really relied on internet connections for most of their games until like the Wii.
Right. Although Pokemon X and Y is a very large example.
Does it do that?
Well, no, they had to release a patch like within the first month because saving like on a certain road could wipe your save.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was a random chance thing. And once people figured it out, nobody like saved there and they avoided the problem, but then the patch came out and it's like, okay, you're safe. But these things do happen even to Nintendo.
Right. But like these patches that we were talking about. So if you're around, if you paid attention during the Xbox One launch, the Xbox One launched $500, $100 more than the PlayStation 4, but it came with the Kinect in it, the Kinect 1. Now, the Kinect 1 was eating up some potential memory that could be used for game developers when they weren't using the Kinect in their game. Mm-hmm. So I don't remember like the first game that really had an example of this where they said, oh, we're going to change They had a patch where you would no longer need all that memory for using the Kinect, and it would allow the Xbox One developers to basically up-res their games so they could directly compete with the PlayStation 4. Because during the beginning of the cycle, it was like a Resgate. I'm just made up that name, Resgate, R-E-Z.
I think someone probably mentioned it.
It probably exists. Where they would show, this is the game running on PS4, it's 1080p. This is the game running on Xbox One, it's some random number between 720 and 1080. It might be 900. It might be, 800 or something like that. But it wasn't up to the same level as PlayStation 4.
Because of the Kinect.
Right. So therefore it was I was just helping PS4 already cheaper and doesn't have this memory loss. Like you're not losing any definition.
You're paying for less
yes.
with the Xbox One during that time frame.
Right. And you're paying more for less, which sucks.
Yeah, sorry, more for less.
But like now, when at E3 this past year, when they were like, it's before E3, they were like, yeah, this Kinect thing, you don't need it. It's not in the box. We already made the update, but you don't even need it anymore.
They barely mentioned it in their press conference. They were trying to move it out the door.
Yeah, of course. When it was first announced, it's coming in the box. Mm-hmm. You're gonna be able to use it for the voice controls where they were showing on screen. You can use all this like during the announcement, and now it's like ghost town.
The guy in charge of all that got fired.
Yeah.
The reason why the Xbox Ones have gotten repriced without Kinect and all these new bundles have come out is because the guy in charge of that department has been replaced because Microsoft couldn't tolerate losing the console war this badly this early.
Right. So Phil Spencer is the head of Xbox now, and he used to be the head of Xbox Studios, the game studios.
Right.
But now he's the head of Xbox, and he has completely shift the focus of Xbox One, Xbox in particular, to games. So when Xbox One first came out on the scene, it was this is your one-stop box for every entertainment thing that you want in your house. You're not going to need a PlayStation. You're not going to need a Blu-ray player. You're not going to need a DVD player because this thing can do everything. It connects to your cable. It can be used as a DVR if you have that functionality.
Yeah, it depends on your cable carrier.
Yeah, it's sort of weird stuff there. But like you could yell at it to go, Xbox, go to Netflix, it goes to Netflix. Xbox, do whatever, and it does that. And it was like, oh great, you want to watch the NFL? You can watch the NFL from your console. You don't even need a cable provider.
That took money from investing in exclusives and studios that Microsoft owned.
Yes.
And so all of that started to slide, and there was dissatisfaction.
Right. So Phil Spencer comes in charge, And then you see a complete turnaround this year's E3 where it was all games all the time. That's all they talked about. They talked about the Halo channel and a little bit about the production that they're doing for the Halo TV series, like very briefly.
Yeah.
But they did not talk about Xbox TV like at all. Basically, it was like, oh, remember that thing where we were going to try and make our own TV shows and everything? That's sort of still going, but don't worry about that. Play this game that we're going to show you. Did you enjoy our discussion of PlayStation versus Xbox? Well, there's plenty more where that came from over at Let's Talk More About PlayStation versus Xbox. Check out the video below, and thanks for watching.